It's a pleasure and an honor to be here today for the Twin City Buddhist Association Ashini Kakushini Memorial Service, as well as your Shutsuki Hoyo. Thank you, Reverend Chiami-san, for that lovely introduction. Your friendship is something that not only I treasure, but we deeply appreciate at New York Buddhist Church, where Reverend Chiami has been kind enough to lead our Japanese discussion, Hawakai, on one Thursday a month. Since I don't speak Japanese, it's very much appreciated. It gives another avenue for our members and for our listeners who are Japanese speakers to enter into the Dharma realm and, partake of the teachings in a way that we, in an approachable way, which is what we all try to do. These services that we have and these holidays are a wonderful opportunity for all of us to not only share in our appreciation of the Dharma, but to learn together. We all learn from each other, and we're all ondobo ondogyo. We're all putting our feet one after the other and walking down the Dharma path. And it's a wonderful thing to have so many Dharma friends to link arms with and know that we're all walking together. When we join our voices as one, we join our voices with Amida, but also with each other, whether we're in New York or whether we're in Twin Cities or Chicago or San Francisco or Japan, our voices become as one. So for those of you who are new to our tradition, Ashini was the wife of our founder, Shinran, and I'm going to speak a bit about her and Kakushini today, who was his daughter, one of the 6 children in their family. Along with Shinran, they were joined in their devotion to the Nembutsu teaching, and I believe they are equally responsible for the survival of the Jodo Shinshu school to this very day. And may surprise some people to hear that although Nishi Honganji, our mother temple in Kyoto, Japan, was founded upon the death of Shinran in 1277, it wasn't until 1921 for Ashini's life to be verified as more than historical fiction. There were many people in Japan who did not believe in Shinran's marriage, who doubted the existence of Ashini, his wife, and even questioned the very existence of Shinran himself. Surprising, no? But it was Ashini's letters to Kakushini, her daughter, which were discovered in Honganji's archives by Professor Washio Kyodo, that turned these doubts into facts that could be validated by scholars and historians. So thanks to these 10 letters from Ashini, which he wrote to her daughter in the last years of her life, we are able to know the real history of Shinran's life and more about the founding of Honganji. So while her letters are important for teaching us about the day-to-day reality of Shinran's life, they're also important for what they reveal about the personal and the spiritual lives of both Ashini and Kakushini. So through reading them, we can see Ashini not only as the wife of our exalted spiritual teacher, but also as a real woman, contending with life as a mother, as a wife, in difficult times, difficult circumstances, while also seeking her own spiritual enlightenment, what we call real multitasking today. So it's wonderful that through the efforts of the FBWA, we finally gave official recognition to Kakushini, not because she was Shinran's daughter, but because his spiritual guidance would not be available to us today if it were not for her foresight and her diligence in preserving his profound insights for the future. So Ashini's letters reveal a lot of insights into Shinran's personal life, of course, but they also tell of his spiritual journey through his earlier life. Because Ashini wrote to Kakushini about Shinran's life when he was a young Buddhist monk, as well as when he broke from the Tendai school, when he met Honen, how important that was to him, how he embraced the Nembutsu teaching without looking back, wholeheartedly. And in the year 1207, the imperial court banned the teaching of Nembutsu because of political circumstances, and ordered the exile of Honen and Shinran. And in fact, two of Honen's disciples were beheaded. This had to do with ladies of the imperial court going and listening to the Dharma, and someone spreading the rumor that perhaps there was some dallying going on. And very political, very political. We know that the Nembutsu teaching was feared, in a sense, by the more established houses because of the populace that it reached and because of its widespread influence. So after this, although Honen and Shinran's lives were spared, they were no longer allowed to be monks. They were given new names as lay people, and Shinran, who was now called Fuji Zenshin, was exiled to Echigo, which was a pretty bleak place in Niigata Prefecture. But there he met and he married Ashini. So that's the silver cloud in that dark lining for sure. But since the time of his banishment, Shinran referred to himself as neither monk nor lay. We might say, how could he be both in that time? Because today, married clergy is commonplace, but in those days, you were either a celibate monk or a married householder. But Shinran was Japan's first married clergy because his commitment to sharing the content of his spiritual awakening was in no way diminished by his marriage or by the hardships endured during his exile. He was able to share the Nembutsu teachings with the illiterate peasants and fishermen of Echigo, and of course with his wife and family. And in return, Ashini supported Shinran financially. We know she owned an estate, she even had some servants. And so she provided the circumstances by which Shinran could continue to propagate the teachings while she raised their family. Ashini's letters reveal she was also a devoted follower of the Nembutsu teaching, who respected Shinran and believed him to be an embodiment of Kannon Bosatsu, the Bodhisattva of compassion. But he also believed this of her. They had 6 children. Kakushini was the youngest daughter. And while Shinran propagated the Nembutsu teachings throughout the Kanto region, Ashini raised their 6 children virtually alone. And as time passed, Shinran became increasingly concerned with preserving the teachings, as Nembutsu followers began to be ruthlessly persecuted, and Honen's grave was even desecrated. This ultimately resulted in Shinran leaving Kanto, moving to Kyoto with Kakushini, and devoting the last 60 years of his life writing his magnum opus, which we know as Kyogyo Shinsho. It's an abbreviation of its longer name. But it's a series of selections and commentaries from Buddhist scriptures, which support the foundation of a new single practice Buddhist school through establishing a doctrinal lineage. It's written in classical Chinese. The intended audience was more scholars and monks because of this contested lineage at that time. Shinran was absolutely devoted to preserving the teachings of Honen. He never sought to establish his own school. But were it not for Ashini and later Kakushini's complete support, and equally shared devotion to his efforts, it would have been a much more difficult, if not impossible, endeavor for him to complete within his lifetime. When Shinran died in 1263, he was still virtually unknown among Buddhists in Kyoto, as most of his efforts of propagation had been in the Kanto area. So we must thank Ashini for her support of Shinran's life and work, but we must also look to Kakushini and thank her for creating the firm foundation for the teachings to endure to this day. So why do I say that? Without Kakushini, there would be no Honganji, no Monshu, no transmission of Shinran's teachings, and then we'd have no BCA, no Eastern District, no Twin Cities, no New York Buddhist Church, no Dharma sharing. How fortunate we are that Kakushini had this, the fortitude and the devotion to take care of her father in his final years. She was about 30 when Shinran died, and a very advanced age of 90. She was as devout a follower as Shinran, and she wanted to keep his teachings alive and perpetuated, not only for his immediate followers, but for the future. So she had a memorial hall built, which we know as Otani Mausoleum or Otani Gyodo, built for his remains. And this was on land she had inherited from her second husband. She did not give it to her children, as was commonplace. She gave it to the Sangha. She enshrined an image of Shinran in the mausoleum, and she was well aware of the devotion and the veneration of his followers. So she recognized the need to create a spiritual and physical home for his remains so that people could visit his tomb. So after about 50 years, this mausoleum became an official temple under her grandson, who was the Monshu Kakunyo. And it was named Honganji, or Temple of the Primal Vow, and developed through the efforts of Renyo and later abbots into one of the largest and most powerful Buddhist schools in Japan. So we might even say that Kakushini was the first Monshu in a way. She was the first caregiver as well as the founder of Nishi Honganji. So you can now understand that I say it wouldn't exist today without Ashini and Kakushini's vision, efforts, and devotion in supporting Shinran and his teachings and enabling them to grow to what it is today. So we might even call them the mothers of Jodo Shinshu. Without them, there might not be a Honganji today. Kakushini's devotion to a father and her desire to see the continuance of Amida's compassionate teaching was central to the creation of Jodo Shinshu as an institution. And it was also Kakushini who established the rules, ensuring that the gravesite and the property that it was built upon would belong to the Jodo Shinshu Sangha for all generations. She donated the gravesite to all the Shinshu followers so that no one family member could claim dominance over it. This was very unusual for the time and the inheritance laws in Japan. Kakushini established a system of caretakers, which were to be named from her descendants. So it is interesting to note that the blood lineage that continues to the Monshu or the abbot of Honganji can be traced back to her son by her first marriage, Kakue, and not through one of Shinran's sons, as we might have expected. Amida Buddha, although formless, is regarded as both our father and our mother. For true reality is beyond our commonplace dualistic thinking that we have in our everyday human minds. Kakushini and Ashini were two people who showed through their life that they entrusted themselves to Amida Buddha sincerely, without any doubt. Thanks to them, and thanks to countless other Buddhist women, including our members who we commemorate today, we're enabled to see that the teaching applies to all of us without exception. So the lives of Shinran, Ashini, and Kakushini really joined together to bring the Nembutsu Dharma to this present day and beyond. So in considering the lives of Ashini and Kakushini, we see how the Nembutsu teaching was carried forward from the life and the spiritual experience of Shinran himself to find a foothold here and now as Jodo Shinshu in America, throughout the world. From the karmic conditions that created a foundation for Shinran and Ashini's life together, their daughter drew her own inspiration for the future, dipping into the whelm of the Dharma for nourishment and support. And thanks to them, we too have encountered this teaching, which guides our lives with a deep sense of meaning, giving us strength, hope, endurance when we suffer and face obstacles in our path. And together we congregate to listen to the Buddha's teaching, transmitted from over 2,500 years ago by many people, by Shakyamuni, Nagarjuna, the other 7 masters, Honen, Shinran, Ashini, Kakushini, and our own ancestors, friends, loved ones, teachers, relatives. We come together on Shotsuki Hoyo to acknowledge their great compassion. This is one of the most important things that we do in our lives spiritually. We formally recite the 3 treasures during service, but the world we live in also contains treasures that we mine for enlightenment, though we must first recognize these. Until then, we're blind to them, or as is usually the case, we take them for granted. And our connections to others, our relationships are some of those things, whether it's to our environment, to our living family, but also to those who've gone before us to the Pure Land. We're very fortunate to be together today. Each of our homes has religious objects that I see in the background that embody not only the Buddha's teaching and our devotion to them and to learning them, but also Shinran's understanding of them, but also all of those who've gone before us, who contributed to our lives spiritually, physically, emotionally, which we now share so that we're together, enjoying the Dharma, listening to the Buddha's teaching, and sharing with one another. And we have access to all of this through the lives of everyone who supported us, who carried us here today. So let us now all join our palms together in gratitude for all that we have been given from the past to today, in thanks for Ashini and Kakushini's efforts, as well as all who we honor and remember on Shotsuki Hoyo, each of whom in their own way supported us through their friendship, life, devotion to the Jodo Shinshu tradition. Let us further rededicate ourselves to being the best we can be, to deepening our understanding, and through it, expressing and sharing the true and real value of the teachings in our lives. Please say the Nembutsu with me so that we may join in one voice. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo. Thank you all for listening.